Now I reckon not all stories start with gunfire or galloping horses. Some sneak up on you quiet like, same as the dawn easing over a prairie ridge. That's how it was the day I found the crate. It was spring of '87, and I just bought myself a few acres of dry Wyoming scrub, hoping to turn it into something useful. I wasn't looking for adventure or companionship, just tools, wood, and the kind of silence that don't argue back. My name's Silas Boone, and back then, all I wanted was a quiet life with sawdust on my boots and a hammer in my hand. I had ordered a shipment, nothing fancy. A set of plain blades, some nails, hinges, and a new crosscut saw I'd been savant for. Took near 2 months for it to come by rail, what with the snows and a busted axle on the freight cart. So when the wagon finally rolled up to my cabin and the driver, a young fellow with more dust than sense, climbed down and said, "Boone, got a box here with your name." I nodded and motioned to set it by the work shed. It was heavier than I expected, marked with my initials sure enough, but something about the way the boards were nailed felt off. And the silence, most crates got a rattle or clink inside, tools jostling around. This one didn't. The kid hopped back in the driver's seat, tipped his hat, and rode off before I could question it. I stood there a moment, thumbing the edges of the lid, then grabbed my pry bar and cracked it open. Now, I seen strange things in my time. Ghost towns with furniture still setting in place, cattle born with 2 heads, even a preacher who claimed he could smell sin. But never had I opened a crate expecting iron and found a baby instead. Yep, a baby. Swaddled up in a threadbare quilt, cheeks red from the cold, eyes bluer in a summer sky. He didn't cry, not at first. Just blinked up at me like I was the one who'd been mailed to him. My breath caught like a burr in the throat. I looked around, half expecting someone to jump out shouting prank or mistake, or maybe even gotcha. But the prairie was empty, far as the eye could see. Tucked beside the child was a folded letter, shaky handwriting on thin, yellowed paper. To the man who orders tools, but needs more than nails. This child ain't mine, but he's yours now. He's got your eyes. Don't ask how. Just raise him better than I ever could. Well, that knocked the wind right out of me. My eyes? I wasn't no Casanova. I kept to myself most my years. No woman had ever claimed me, and I'd never claimed a child. But that boy, he sure had eyes the color of winter steel, same as mine in the mirror each morning. He picked that moment to let out a gurgle, then a laugh, soft and sweet like spring water trickling through stone. I didn't know the first thing about raising babies. My hands were built for hammering, not hugging. But something in me shifted then. I scooped him up, feeling clumsy and colossal. He fit against my chest like he was meant to be there, like some piece of me I'd never known was missing. I named him Eli, not after no prophet or saint, just the name that came to me when I looked at him, like the wind whispered it between the cottonwoods. That night, I didn't sleep a wink. The wind howled like it had secrets to spill, and I sat by the fire holding Eli close, feeling every cracked board of my old cabin shift under the weight of something new. Not tools, not trouble, but life. And life, it don't come with instructions. By the next morning, Eli had cried enough to wake the buzzards off Dead Man's Ridge. I didn't rightly blame him. He was just a baby, and I was a fool with calloused hands and no notion what to do with diapers or bottles or lullabies. My only comfort was a tin of beans and a half-empty canteen, and neither was worth much to a crying child. I tried feeding him warm milk from a tin cup. Most of it dribbled down his chin. Then I rocked him in my arms, humming low and off-key, like I remember my ma doing when I was knee-high to a tumbleweed. He finally slept just past noon, mouth open, hands twitching, like he was dreaming about something kinder than this dusty life. I spent the afternoon rummaging through my supplies, built him a little crib out of scrap pine, and lined it with a horse blanket, stitched a quilt from old shirts I'd outgrown. I even rode into town, 10 miles of rattling wagon and sunburnt road, to ask Miss Adeline Grant, the preacher's widow and the only woman within 40 miles with any sense, what a baby needed to stay alive. She looked me up and down, her apron dusted with flour, and said, "Silas Boone, if that baby survives your stubborn pride, he'll outlive us all." She handed me a list longer than my arm. Powdered milk, cloth diapers, liniment for rashes, a rattle made from a carved applewood handle. Then she pressed a small book into my hand titled Raising the Young, a Mother's Guide. I reckon she figured I was missing both experience and the right anatomy. That night, back in the cabin, I lit the lantern and sat on the floor beside Eli's new crib. He looked up at me, eyes wide, cheeks pink as a prairie rose. He didn't cry, just watched me like he was waiting for something. So I talked. "Don't know if you can understand me, son," I said, my voice like gravel on a cold stove. "But I didn't ask for you. And you sure didn't ask for me. Still, here we are." He gurgled, blinking real slow. "I ain't much. Don't own land worth its weight in dust. Don't got no kin left, neither. But I know how to build things, fences, wagons, barns. Maybe I can learn to build a life for you, too." That night, I dreamed of thunder rolling across the hills and a rider coming fast, cloak flapping like a raven's wings. But instead of a gun or a wanted poster, he carried a baby, my baby. And when he handed him over, he said, "He ain't a burden, Boone. He's a beginning." I woke with sweat on my brow and a cry from the crib. Eli needed changing, and I was already half late to fix the Thompson family's fence. But somehow, none of that mattered like it used to. There was a weight to fatherhood, not the kind that broke a man's back, but the kind that straightened it. And I'd only just begun to carry it. It didn't take long before folks started talking. Whispered it in the mercantile, over coffee at the blacksmith's porch, and loudest of all when they thought I couldn't hear. "Boone's gone soft. Heard he's raising some foundling. Bet it ain't even his." I didn't mind the talk. Let him spit wind. But what gnawed at me was how much I didn't know. Not about diapers or colic or lullabies, but about Eli himself. Who left him? Why'd they say he had my eyes? The letter haunted me. I'd read it 100 times by then, every word scorched into memory. "He's got your eyes." What did that mean? I wasn't one to chase ghosts, but Eli, he stirred something. I started digging, slow and quiet, a scan around at the post office, where freight came in, where it was sent from. The shipping manifest said the crate was dropped off in Cheyenne, no sender listed, paid in cash. Now, Cheyenne was a ways off, and I wasn't ready to leave Eli alone, not even for a day. So I wrote a letter to a fella I knew, Wendell Hargreaves, a grizzled telegraph man who owed me from way back when I built his porch and fixed his stovepipe. I asked him to check the depot, find a freight clerk who'd taken the package, told him not to stir no trouble, just get names, and if none came, at least a description. While I waited, life marched on. Eli cut his first tooth and screamed like a mountain lion for 2 straight nights. I tried every remedy Adeline offered, teas, cold spoons, even whiskey rubbed on his gums. Don't tell the preacher. None of it worked worth a plug nickel. But after the storm passed, he gave me his first real laugh. Just sat there in the high chair I built him, cheeks puffed out, and when I dropped my spoon and muttered, "Well, ain't that a mess?" he let loose the sweetest sound I'd ever heard, like the prairie itself chuckling under the stars. I reckon my heart cracked open right then. A few weeks later, Wendell's reply came by post, scrawled, smudged, and to the point. Clerk remembers a woman, late 20s, tall, wore a blue bonnet, real quiet, paid in coin, didn't give her name, had a baby with her, said it was her nephew. That's all I could get. W. So there was a woman. Maybe she was Eli's kin. Maybe not. Maybe she just couldn't keep him. Or maybe she was running, same as I once did, from something meaner in memory. Didn't matter, because that baby was mine now, not by blood, maybe, but by bond. And I'd sooner throw myself into a prairie fire than let the world chew him up. That night, I carved a new sign for the gatepost. Took me near till dawn to finish it. Big, block letters that read, Boone and Son. Didn't matter if he was old enough to read it. Didn't matter if no one else believed it. He was my boy, and I'd build him a life plank by plank. By the time Eli was tottering around in them little boots Adeline made, life had settled into a kind of rhythm. Mornings came with the smell of coffee and baby giggles. Evenings ended with stories by lamplight and the sound of tiny breaths, soft and even, beneath a patched quilt. But peace in the West don't tend to last. Sooner or later, trouble comes riding in. looking for a place to sit. It was near sundown when I saw him. Tall fella, dressed like he thought dust was fashionable, gray coat, worn hat, and a silver ring on his finger. Too big to be ordinary, too ornate for a simple man. He rode a black horse that moved like smoke, and when he dismounted, his boots didn't kick up so much as a cough of dust. He didn't knock, just stepped up on the porch and stood there staring at me through the screen door like he already knew me. "You Silas Boone?" he asked, his voice cool as creek water in spring. I didn't answer right away, just nodded slow, one hand drifting toward the hammer sitting on the table. He smiled, not with his mouth, but with his eyes. The kind of smile that don't mean friendliness, the kind that knows more than it should. "You got something of mine," he said. My blood turned to ice. I didn't have to ask what he meant. "You're mistaken," I said, keeping my tone flat. "Ain't got nothing here but a baby and a busted fence." He chuckled. "Exactly." Now I stood up, slow and deliberate. "You listen here, mister. I don't know who you are, but that boy ain't up for claim. You best turn around for the light fades." He stepped forward once, just once, then reached into his coat. My heart hitched. I grabbed the hammer, but he didn't draw iron. He pulled out a paper, folded, yellowed, and familiar, the same handwriting as the letter that came in the crate. "He ain't mine either," the man said, his voice suddenly quieter. But I was supposed to deliver him to the man who could give him something better. He held out the paper, and I took it with cautious fingers. It was another note, dated the same day as the first, but unfinished. Just a line. "He was born into shadows, but he don't have to stay there. The man with the scar will protect him." Scar. I swallowed. The man didn't have a scar I could see, but maybe that was the point. Maybe it wasn't on his face. He turned to go, but paused at the steps. "Name's Alden," he said. "That boy's got a lot of folks looking for him. Some better than me, some a whole lot worse." Then he tipped his hat and rode off without another word, disappeared down the trail like he was never real to begin with. I stood there a long time, the note still in my hand, the light gone from the sky. Inside, Eli slept on the floor, curled up with his wooden horse and a blanket over his legs. Born into shadows. I didn't know what that meant, not yet, but I knew one thing for certain. If the world was coming for that boy, it'd have to come through me. 3 days after Alden vanished into the hills, the winds shifted. Not just the weather, though the sky turned an odd shade of copper, and the air smelled sharp like metal and coming rain. No, it was the kind of shift a man feels in his bones before a stampede or a showdown. I didn't know what was coming, but I knew it had Eli's name tied to its saddle horn. I kept him close, took him with me while I chopped wood, strapped him to my back in a sling Miss Adeline helped me stitch. My hammer still swung like always, but I started wearing the pistol too. Not on the belt, on the hip. Ready. Then one afternoon, I rode into town for kerosene and flour. Eli was bundled in the wagon, sleeping sound as a rock in a stream bed. I stepped into the general store, nodded to a few folks, and started collecting what I needed. Then I heard it glass shattering. Loud. Final. I dropped the sack of beans and rushed outside. The front window of the sheriff's office was busted in. Smoke poured out the door, black and mean. Townsfolk were shouting, scattering. And there, in the middle of the street, stood 3 riders. Not lawmen, not ranchers, bounty hunters. Their coats were dusted red from the road, faces half wrapped in scarves like they were ashamed to show the world what they were. One of them, a thick-necked brute with a scar down his chin, held a wanted poster high. Even from the porch, I could read the headline. Infant male. No name. Known alias Eli. Reward, $500, dead or alive. I ain't sure what happened first, my heart stopping, or my feet moving. I was off that porch and running for the wagon before the first bullet flew. They'd seen me. One of them shouted, "He's got the kid." I didn't argue, just grabbed the reins and cracked him hard. The old mule groaned, but moved like he knew this was his last chance to run proud. Bullets hissed past like angry bees. Wood splintered. A shot clipped the wagon's sideboard. Eli wailed in his bundle, scared and small but very much alive. We tore down the dusty street, townsfolk ducking and scattering. I heard the thunder of hooves behind us. At least 2 of them were following. I didn't head home. Didn't seem wise to lead the devil to your doorstep. Instead, I cut across Coyote Creek, water splashing over the wheels, and took a narrow game trail up through Raven's Pass, steep, rocky, and twisted like a drunk man's path home. A place no sane horse would chase a wagon. But I wasn't feeling sane. I was feeling cornered. By dusk, the trail vanished behind us, and the sky bled orange over the ridgeline. I made camp in a holler between the rocks. Small fire, just enough to warm the milk and hush the boy. Eli clung to me like I was the whole world. And maybe I was, for now. I cradled him close, staring at that cursed poster, the reward heavy in my mind. $500. That's more'n some outlaws fetch. Why? Who wants this boy? What's buried in his past that makes him worth more dead than safe? I didn't have answers. Just one truth, burning bright as any brand. They weren't talking him. Not while I still drew breath. We holed up in the widow Merriweather's cabin 3 days after the shooting in town. She wasn't kin to me, but she owed me a favor, or maybe it was guilt, on account of her boy being one of the ones who joined them bounty riders years back and ended up face down in the dust. Her cabin sat high in the pine belt, nestled where the creek whispered instead of roared, and where men didn't pass unless they were lost or running. She opened the door and said, "You look like death's porch swing, Silas." I just handed her Eli and near collapsed on the step. "Trouble?" she asked, already rocking him gently. "The kind that wears spurs and smells like blood," I said. She didn't flinch. Didn't need to. Women like her had buried more than husbands and sons. They'd buried dreams. She just nodded and brought us inside. The cabin was warm, if a little drafty. She had stew on the fire, and the kind of peace that comes from letting go of hope long ago. Eli settled in easy. Guess he sensed her calm. Me, I couldn't rest much. Sleep kept getting kicked aside by thoughts of that poster. A baby with no name. No birth record. No past, but a price on his head. The next morning, the widow laid out an old keepsake box. Inside were maps, scraps of newsprint, clippings from back east. She said, "You're not the only one asking questions lately. Some man passed through here last spring, called himself a preacher, but he carried a revolver and didn't quote much scripture. Said he was looking for a woman, tall, dark-haired, blue bonnet, had a baby she weren't supposed to." I froze. That matched what Wendell told me. The widow handed me a yellowed clipping, an announcement from a paper in Kansas City. A marriage between a politician's son and a woman of no family name. No picture, just a whisper of scandal. Below it, scribbled in her hand, "Child born in secret. Vanished from hospital records." That was Eli. He weren't just unwanted. He was hidden. Buried, maybe. To protect someone with power, or shame, or both. And now, somebody'd put a bounty on him to make sure he stayed buried. I felt sick. Eli cooed from the hearth, gnawing on a piece of biscuit, blissfully unaware. The widow reached over, lay her hand on mine. "You think you're the only man ever handed something fragile and scared, and told to keep it alive." Her voice cracked like a dry branch. "You're not. You just happen to be one who didn't walk away." I swallowed hard. "How long can we hide?" She smiled sad-like. "You don't hide from fire, Silas. You move through it. You protect the flame. And when the wind comes for it, you become the wind's reckoning." That night, I sat with my back to the door, rifle across my knees, Eli asleep in my coat. The fire flickered low, shadows climbing the walls. And I made a choice. We'd stop running. It was time to go find the preacher. Time to dig up whatever truth someone out there wanted dead. We left the widow's place at dawn, shadows long and frost clingy. She packed us hardtack and a flask of coffee, so strong it could wake the dead. I thanked her, tipped my hat, and told her I'd come back if I could. She looked at Eli, kissed his forehead, and said, "Don't come back unless it's for good." I aimed us west toward Fort Laramie, where I'd heard talk of the preacher. Not the kind that held sermons, mind you, but the kind that carried God on one shoulder and a shotgun on the other. Fella by the name of Josiah Vane. He'd come through the fort weeks back. A skin quiet questions, leaving loud impressions. One corporal said he wore a cross carved from bone, and that he prayed over his bullets before he loaded them. Now, I ain't a superstitious man, but when bullets get prayed over, I tend to listen. Took us 2 days, riding slow on account of Eli. Camping under stars, sharing stew from a can, and tucking him in with my coat for a blanket. Every night, he'd fall asleep holding my finger like it was an anchor in a world that wouldn't quit rocking. When we reached the fort, it was buzzing with news. Trader's wagon had been torched out near Buffalo Butte. Left burning, horses gone. No survivors. Folks whispered it was bandits. But I saw the way the soldiers looked uneasy, like they knew better. One old scout, name of Pickens, told me. It weren't bandits. It was Vane. I seen him ride past not an hour before that blaze started. He's looking for something. Or someone. I asked where he went. North, Pickens said. Toward the reservation line. Said he had business with an elder. Asked about a baby. I felt that word like a jab to the ribs. Back on the trail, Eli dozed in my saddlebag, his little head nestled in a bed of flannel. I rode quiet, thinking. Who was Vane? What did he want with Eli? And why was everyone who touched this child's past ending up dead or gone? As the sun dipped behind the pines, I spotted smoke. Not thick, not like fire, but a wisp deliberate. A camp. I dismounted, crept low. There he was. Josiah Vane. Tall. Broad. Hair silvered but thick. He sat cross-legged by a dying fire, polishing a revolver with a cloth that looked cleaner than his soul. The bone cross hung from his neck, and beside him, a journal. I took a breath and stepped into the light. He didn't reach for the gun. Just looked up, slow and calm, like he expected me. You Boone? He asked. I am. He nodded toward the baby behind me. And that's the boy. I didn't answer. He exhaled like a prayer. Then I ain't too late. I stepped closer, hand near my holster. Too late for what? To protect him, he said. I didn't expect that. Vane tossed the cloth into the fire and stood, every motion smooth, practiced. I ain't here to hurt him, Boone. I'm here to make sure no one else does. Why? I asked. He looked past me, eyes shadowed. Because I failed the last one. He turned to his journal, opened it, and handed me a page. A birth record. No name. Mother listed as A. Father unknown but highly placed. Location. St. Mercy's private home for the wayward and afflicted. That's a fancy name for a place rich folks hide shame. Vane said. That child, your boy, was supposed to disappear. Paid for by a name I won't yet speak. But the mother she ran. Sent him away. Sent him to you. My hands trembled. You were meant to keep him hidden, Vane added. But now that bounty, it ain't about money. It's a message. They're cleaning up what got loose. Eli whimpered behind me, stirring in his sleep. I looked Vane dead in the eye. So what now? He holstered his iron slow. Now we ride. You, me, the boy. North, into the territory where law don't stretch and truth can breathe. I know a place. We've got one shot. I didn't trust him. Not fully. But I saw no lie in his face. And I had no better path. So I nodded once. And the three of us, me, a preacher with bullets for prayers, and a baby with a past that could start a war, rode into the dark. The trail north bent sharp and mean. Snow still clung to the shady places up in the Tetons, and the wind cut with a blade's edge. Eli was bundled so thick he looked like a loaf of bread with eyes, and even Vane started wearing gloves, though I suspect not just for warmth. He said the place we were heading was called Hollow Ridge. A monastery, he told me. Old Jesuit outpost, now run by a woman named Sister Calla. Ain't church like most know it. They shelter folk who need disappearing. Disappearing? I asked. You mean hiding? He nodded. Same song, different verse. We rode hard, only stopping to rest the horses and warm Eli's milk over coals. Vane didn't speak much, but when he did, it was the kind of talk that stuck to a man. Truth, he said one night by the fire, ain't always something to chase. Sometimes you protect it by burying it, not to lie, but to keep it from those who'd twist it into a noose. I chewed on that a while. By the fourth day, Eli started saying, "Duh, not full, Daddy. Just duh." But it shook me more than any gunshot. I didn't know what to say. So I didn't. Just picked him up, held him close, and whispered, "I got you, boy. That's all that matters." We reached Hollow Ridge under a quilt of snow and cloud. The buildings were stone and timber, tucked into the hillside like they were born from the rock. A bell tower rose above it all, its chimes soft and slow. Sister Calla met us in the courtyard. Tall woman, skin brown as river mud, eyes sharper than broken glass. She took one look at Eli and nodded. "This is the child?" she asked. I stepped forward. "His name's Eli." She bent low, stroked his cheek, and said, "Then we'll keep him safe." They gave us shelter, warm beds, and stew thick with root vegetables and mercy. That night, I slept in a real bed for the first time in weeks. Vane sat by the fire, polishing that bone cross again, his eyes far off. I asked him, "You ever think about quitting? Giving this up?" He didn't look up. Just said, "I did. Once. Cost me a boy not unlike yours." He didn't say more. Didn't have to. In Hollow Ridge, days passed quieter. Eli laughed more, started crawling, then pulling himself up on furniture like he had some place to be. The sisters took to him, taught him little songs, gave him carved toys. But the peace was thin, fragile, like ice over spring, and it cracked when the telegram came. Vane read it in the refectory, hand steady. Then he looked at me and said, "They found us." "How?" "Someone from the fort," he guessed. "Or a bounty hunter who recognized my trail. Doesn't matter. We've got 2 days at most." I stood there, fists clenched. "Then we run." "No," Vane said. "We fight." My gut twisted. "With what?" He reached under his coat, pulled out a rolled map, spread it across the table. Hollow Ridge sat like a fortress on a ridge with only 2 approaches, one from the pass, the other from the creek bed. He looked me dead in the eye. "They want the boy. They'll have to come through a mountain of regret to get him." I swallowed hard. I never wanted this fight, but it was mine now. Not for a bounty, not for blood, for Eli. They came before dawn. 8 riders, faces hid behind scarves and smoke-colored hats, rifles slung and pistols primed. From atop Hollow Ridge, we saw them, dark specks against the snow, moving slow and sure, like wolves that smelled blood beneath the stone. Vane stood beside me on the parapet, coat flap in, eyes narrow. "That's not just a crew," he muttered. "That's a message." He was right. They didn't hide their trail, didn't send a scout or fire a warning shot. They wanted us to know they were coming, wanted fear to settle in deep. But fear don't bloom easy in men with nothing left to lose. Sister Calla had fortified the place during leaner winters, stone walls waist-high around the ridge, oil lanterns mounted like torches, and old rifles wrapped in oiled cloth under the floorboards of the chapel. She handed me one without a word. I took it, checked the chamber. 5 rounds. Enough, if you didn't miss. I kissed Eli's forehead while he slept, tucked safe in the back with 2 sisters, and the steel lock on the door. "Don't open for no one," I told them. Then I stepped into the cold. We dug in just before the first shot rang out. A warning, I reckon, but we didn't flinch. Vane crouched behind the wall, scoped the trail through the pines. 2 Leodin. One's got a long gun. They're riding disciplined, military maybe. My gut sank. Hired guns. Or worse, he said. Government hush types. Ones that don't need warrants or mercy. They called out once, voice echoing off stone. "Give us the child, and we'll spare the rest. No need for blood." Vane laughed, not kind. Always the same lie. Then it started. Gunfire cracked like firewood, and the whole world turned red and white. Blood on snow, smoke in the lungs. We hit back, me, Vane, and a brother from the old seminary who hadn't fired a shot in 20 years, but still knew how to aim. 2 of theirs dropped in the first hour. Another limped away screaming. But we took its 2. The old wall crumbled on the east end. One of the sisters caught shrapnel near the shoulder. Vane took a graze across the thigh. Kept going like it was a mosquito bite. By nightfall, 4 of them were still out there, setting up camp down the hill. We heard their voices. No panic. No retreat. They were waiting. For what? I didn't know. Inside, Eli woke from a nap and wouldn't stop crying. Not fear. Hunger. The kind of cry that fills the cracks in a man's resolve. I held him close, whispered, "I ain't lettin' 'em take you, boy. I'd burn the world first." And I meant it. Vane limped over, sat beside me. "We won't last another day," he said, quiet. "I know. There's one more way out. A trail behind the chapel. It's steep, old, half buried in snow, but you could ride it." "I ain't running." He shook his head. "I'll stay. You ride." I stared him down. "No." But he didn't blink. "This ain't about pride, Boone. It's about that boy. He needs a future, and you're the one who can give it." I didn't sleep that night. Just sat by the fire, watching Eli breathe, feeling the weight of 2 lives, his and mine, pressed in against the walls of that stone cabin. At dawn, Vane laid out the saddle, packed it light. Sister Calla handed me a note, a name, an address, someone up in Montana who owed her favors. "They'll take you in," she said, "but only if you ride fast and quiet." The rest was smoke and silence. We saddled up. Eli swaddled tight. I nodded once to Vane, not trusting myself to speak. Then I rode. Down the back trail. Snow clinging to branches. Hooves slipping on rock. Heart hammering like a war drum. Behind me, gunfire started again. Vane had drawn their attention. He'd bought us time. Time I wasn't going to waste. I rode till my bones rattled and my soul ached. The trail from Hollow Ridge bent narrow, through frostbit canyons, then spilled out into plains soaked with morning gold. Eli slept most of the way, his little hands clutching my coat, like he knew every jolt and gallop was meant to keep him alive. We crossed into Montana 3 days later, dirty, half-froze, but breathing. The name Sister Calla gave me, Caleb Dunn, turned out to be a blacksmith in a town called Sundown Hollow. Built like an ox, beard like a thundercloud, but eyes kind. He looked at Eli, looked at me, and nodded like he'd been expecting us all along. "You're safe here," he said, "but you won't stay hidden long. Word travels, even in the wind." So we laid low. Caleb gave us a room above his forge. Heat from the fire rose through the floorboards, making it the warmest place I'd ever slept. I helped him shoe horses, repair wagon wheels, mend broken hinges. Honest work. Paid enough for bread, milk, and the occasional sweet for Eli. Time passed, slow and kind. Eli started walking, then running. First word was tool. Swear it. I'd be at the workbench, hammering something, and he'd waddle up, hold out a bent nail, saying tool like it was gold. We carved out a life, one splintered board and muddy boot at a time. I never heard from Vane again. Sister Calla wrote once, told me Hollow Ridge held, said the rest of those bounty men disappeared, and Vane was last seen riding east, coat torn and cross-hanging from his saddle. Some say he died. Some say he's still out there, helping the ones caught between silence and justice. Me, I think he bought us our peace, and that's all that matters. Years passed. One day, Eli asked me, "Was I really in a box when you found me?" I smiled. "Yep. Why'd you open it?" "Thought it was tools." He nodded serious. "I was a tool." I laughed long and hard and said, "No, son. You were the thing that fixed me." He hugged me tight. "Love you, da." And that, right there, was the end of it. Or maybe the beginning. Because truth is, I didn't find trouble in that crate. I found family. And in a world full of storms, dust, and men who shoot first and ask never, I reckon that's about the rarest tool of all. So if you ever ride through Sundown Hollow and see a wooden sign hanging over the shop door, letters carved deep and sure, it'll read, Boone and Son, Tools, Repairs, and Second Chances. And if you knock, well, we just might answer.